spending your weekends drinking, taking ecstasy, singing songs, partying with your pals, you know what I mean? And you just thought it was the life at the time. There's a culture where it's like you put a poster up on the wall in the kitchen, and that seems to owners, you know, head chefs, whatever, seem to think that's enough. You know, there's a poster for help if you need it, mental health support, whatever, and that's it. And that's when I realised I had an addiction. But it wasn't me that realised it was my wife.
Aye.
She's been my rock. She stuck with me through thick and thin, through it all, you know. And it was her that sort of that brought it to attention. And then when I started thinking about it, I was like, actually, like I say, sitting at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's not normal behaviour by any stretch of your imagination. You know what I mean? So it would have been about 4 years ago. Would have been a big change. That's when I finally started.
So, welcome to Social Sessions. Today we've got Graeme Stirling. How you doing, Graeme?
Good, mate. Good to see you, Sean. It's been a while, mate. It's been a while, but it's good to see you.
So, obviously we're going to go through, right? We're going to go through your whole life story, a bit chaotic at times and stuff, addiction involved, but we're also going to talk about the hospitality kind of industry and how that's kind of driven a lot by a lot of chaos and stuff. So, I'll take you back to your own childhood. So, where did you grow up?
So, originally I was born in Denniston, and then my mum and dad split up when I was quite young, so I moved to Moodiesburn. So that's where I grew up, as you know. Grew up running about in Moodiesburn. And I think that's where the chaos in my life probably began for quite a young age. You know what I mean? For quite people probably listening be shocked, but it's part of growing up in a scheme, you know, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and you're getting exposed to smoking hash and all the rest of it, and it just sort of goes on for years, you know what I mean? So I grew up in Moodiesburn, spent all my time in Moodiesburn until I got into chefing, and then that became, you know, working the long hours. I stopped seeing the boys from Moodiesburn, but the chaos certainly didn't stop.
No, I think obviously I went to school with you, Graeme, so obviously I know like the way Moodiesburn was at the time, and there was a lot of kind of like there was a lot of heroin in that at the time and stuff, and but obviously you guys weren't. But I remember when I went to school, when I was for Condorit, and I went obviously to school, and I remember kind of the Moodiesburn boys were just always that wee bit more ahead. They were all smoking and all that. Do you know what I mean? Like for primary.
Well, I remember one of my first memories from high school was standing at the fence smoking a fag first year, and I remember a girl from Westfield saying to me, "Oh, you must be from Moodiesburn then," because it was like my first day at high school and I had a fag in my hand, so you were instantly that you're from Moodiesburn. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. Always kind of carried that reputation, the Moodiesburn guys, don't they?
So what was it like growing up? Were you involved in like the kind of like the gang fighting and all that?
To an extent. I mean, I think it's different outside of Lanarkshire. There's certainly gangs, and I was part of the young team growing up. You know, that group of people that had that reputation. I was certainly massively involved with them. That's who I grew up with. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of them aren't here today. Do you know what I mean? But that's growing up, being part of a gang. That was if you weren't part of the gang in Moodiesburn, you know what I mean? You were out on your own.
I think back then, like 2000 and that. Do you know what I mean? It was like it was kind of like that. It was just like young teams. It was like exactly. It was before kind of like people with like PlayStations and all that. Like really took control of like the young.
You get into school and you were out as quick as you could, and that was you until whenever.
I know, like you saved up your money, your school money for the weekend.
A bottle of tonic.
A tenner used to get you. Used to be able to get a bottle of wine, 20 fags, and a chip at the end of the
rolling
night.
chips at the end of the night. Exactly, mate. Exactly.
But so did that kind of shape you? Do you think?
Absolutely. Aye. And it was quite a traumatic time as well. Looking back, I lost my dad when I was 13. So that certainly, I was already on the path. I sort of going down the chaotic route with people I was hanging about, and I'm not blaming anyone I was hanging about. You make your own choices in life. Do you know what I mean? Even from a young age. But growing up in somewhere like Moodiesburn is a rough area. Do you know what I mean? It's just a big scheme. When I grew up in Moodiesburn, there was the Spam Valley, but even at that, it was it wasn't special, mate. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't. So it was a rough area. And then I lost my dad when I was 13, and that's when the chaos, I think, sort of really began. Do you know what I mean? And then my mum and my gran swapped houses, so I essentially stayed with my gran in Middlesbrough. My gran was an alcoholic, so I was just free reign to do what I wanted, you know. And that's when it started.
Do you think that? Because I remember actually it was a pal from Middlesbrough. Actually, I'm not going to name his name, but I remember he was allowed to kind of stay out to like whenever he wanted, and I was dead jealous of that. Like looking back, I was dead jealous because my mum wanted me in for like 10 o'clock and like stuff.
We
like
were
that.
very much known for that. That was our thing. Like we'd go out on a Friday night, we wouldn't go home on a Sunday. We were 13, 14-year-old.
I know.
And a lot of us were saying, I'm staying with such and such, and I'm staying with such and such. But we were very much the young team that were, you know, just all weekend, getting into different schemes and causing hassle, you know, and your 120 all day ticket and driving around Cumbernauld in buses, drinking Buckfast and fighting with anybody that wanted to fight. And so that's definitely where the chaos began. Do you know what I mean? I think that's sort of ingrained it into me. Do you know what I mean? Just being a scheme.
Because obviously, what kind of drugs were you taking? Because I remember, obviously the TLM. Remember the TLM?
Of course.
And I remember like. Boy from Moody's burnt again. We're taking like Eckies and stuff like that.
I remember
so much
taking them in school. Again, I won't name names, but I remember boys from Moody's burnt that I was good pals with taking them in school and getting into classes. Taking the brown speckled ecstasy tablets of the day and getting into school. So I was you know, from a very young age, that was just part of the culture from about 13, 14-year-old. You know what I mean? It was that's how the weekends went. You know, there was always ecstasy tablets, loads of them, you know. And looking back on it, you think a group of 13-year-olds, how were we? I didn't know where they were coming from or anything like that, but how are a bunch of kids getting, you know, drugs as potent as that? Because that's going to shape you later in life, you know. That's going to cause mental health problems and all the rest of it, you know.
No, and I think in this day and age, like a lot of people will say, like I mean, I just can't imagine. So there's so many people like how kids end up with drugs, like 11-year-olds and stuff like that, and you go, who is selling these stuff? But it doesn't necessarily work like that.
No, it
sometimes works just through a drip.
It just filters down
for like age to kind of age.
Yeah.
But what kind of experience did you have when you were taking drugs and all that? Was it? Did you have good times and all that? Like
looking back, I mean, they were amazing at the time. It was brilliant at the time. You know, you're with 20, 30 your pals at the weekend. You've got the music, the boombox, or there was always somebody with a guitar with his band. You know what I mean? So you're just spending your weekends drinking, taking ecstasy, singing songs, partying with your pals. You know what I mean? And you just thought it was the life at the time. You know what I mean? And then it wasn't until I was about 15 that cocaine became accessible, so to speak. And I'll never forget.
Which is mad, isn't it? 15.
I mean, I look back and my mum had a boy with, obviously after my father died, she met someone else. So I've got two brothers, half brothers. Don't call them brothers, but very much younger than me. The youngest is he's just starting out as a chef up in Glen Eagles. So shout out to him. He's doing well for himself, so I'm proud of him. But when I was growing up and then watching them growing up, and I was, you know, approaching 30 and he was at that, you know, 13-year-old age, and I was thinking, Jesus, like, he's just a baby, man. And I was running about the streets, gang fighting, taking ecstasy tablets, drinking, you know, like it was a bit like Wild West in Middlesbrough growing up, you know what I mean? But then, as I say, when I hit 15, that's when cocaine became accessible, because it was always spoke about, you know, like cocaine back then was it still had that kind of rich man element to it, do you know what I mean? It was like a sort of wealthy drug, and it wasn't something that was ever really, it wasn't something that was taken, do you know what I mean? And then I'll never forget the first time I took it, obviously, you know, a New Year's party. I think I was 15 years old. Again, another boy that we both know came to the party and he had it, took a few lines, and that was it. I think that was a turning point, because that feeling that I got that night, I was always a lot on about that group, and I was in this sort of popular gang. I was always quite a nervous wee guy, especially after my dad died. Do you know what I mean? I had a lot of demons and always just trying to fit in. The ADHD that I now know that I've got, big trait of that. You know what I mean? Just trying to people please all the time and all the rest of it. So I think that played a big part in it. But after that first line, that was a life changing moment. I would say.
So you're 15 at this stage, and then was it a weekend thing?
So after that, I mean, I wasn't taken again for a while after that. I think I was probably approaching 17 and I was working.
Aye.
You know, it was through work at that point.
And is this when you started chefing?
That's when I was chefing. So I started working in the kitchen in a local hotel when I was 15, just washing the dishes. Didn't really know what I wanted to do in my life. Like every boy in the scheme, it's get a trade. I was working in the kitchen and I just loved the atmosphere. You know what I mean? It's got a real buzz to it, the kitchens, you know. They are quite an addictive place to be, and I think if you've got an addictive personality or you've got the virus, as I like to, I think I see it as a virus, you know. It can be very, you know, it sucks you in quickly, and that's what happened. You know, I was 15, I was washing dishes. Before I knew it, I was in chef whites, and then I was in the town working. Had moved out when I was 17, so I had a place of my own, so it was just...
So did you go through, obviously, your college years and that, like, and did you manage to hold that down, or were you through addiction through that as well?
So with college, I done college through work. I was working, and it was like it wasn't from the college, but it was the same qualification that you would have got at college.
Aye.
This guy came and assessed you at work, so you would get, you know, like a sort of homework sheet. Make sure that you can do all this for the next visit, and you get a monthly visit. But at this point, cocaine was a big part of my life.
Aye.
But I didn't see it as a problem. Of course, I didn't see it as a problem, but it was a big part of my life. You know, every time we were going out socialising, somebody would have some. Do you know what I mean? Or I would have some, and you know, you'd go for there was many times, you know, go for a pint, just at one pint, and before you know it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you're standing in somebody's kitchen. Do you know what I mean?
And I think it's probably more prevalent now than ever was.
Absolutely. Like I say, it was something that was spoke about when we were younger in Moody's Bun, but it wasn't something that was ever available to us. So on that New Year's Eve night, it was a bit of a shock that it was even there. You know, I think a few of us were like, "Oh my God, we've got coke." Do you know what I mean? Like, give me some of that. It had that sort of appeal, that, you know, rock star appeal to it. You know what I mean? And then when you get into kitchens as well, it's an epidemic in kitchens, you know.
I know, obviously, we're going to go in and speak about the industry, right? I'm just trying to kind of work through. So, after college, where's your first job? Where do you get?
My first job in the town was Malmaison Hotel in Glasgow. So it was a high-end restaurant.
Aye.
The head chef there was fantastic. He hired, the whole team was really young. Apart from him and the sous chef, the whole team was young guys, and we were all sort of troubled young guys, you know.
Aye.
And he sort of brought us in and he made us into proper chefs, you know. He couldn't control us outside of work, but he certainly controlled us well in work, you know. And he taught us a bit of discipline, and which I probably relied on later in life. Do you know what I mean? But he sort of he was a big part of my early career. But it was still copious amounts of partying and stuff going on outside of work. But I spent 3 years there learning properly how to cook and, you know, all the rest of it.
And which some of the memories that you can remember, like that would probably shock the public to know that these things are going on, and maybe even like things like big hotel chains and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, there was a not in Malmaison, as I say. In Malmaison, it was a very tight ship. It was anything that was going on outside of work.
Aye.
But when I moved on from there was every kitchen I worked in, there was a locker always that had lines on it.
Aye.
Day and night. You know,
just for anybody to
for anybody.
Aye.
It'd just be everybody chipping in, and it'd just always be a locker in a changing room, or a wee back in a dry store, or whatever it may be. I'm not going to name any restaurants or whatever.
No, obviously not.
Everywhere. You know, it played such a big part, and a lot of places it was sort of, I wouldn't say it was pushed on you, but it wasn't frowned upon anyway. You know, it was very much part of being a chef almost. You know.
So see, when I was kind of looking, I was doing a wee bit of kind of research for the podcast, Graeme, right? So it says like. Hospitality in Scotland employs 220,000 people. 8 to 9% of the workforce. This is what they're saying. 8 to 9% of the workforce have got substance issues. No, and that's addiction issues.
Mm-hmm. I'd say it's a much higher percentage than that.
So that we're talking addiction, right? So you would just say that's even higher than that, like actually addicted,
100%.
rather than.
But I think there's so many people that are. I mean, I'm in recovery now, so I understand addiction. You know, I've been in an active recovery for 4 years. I've been in recovery from alcohol for 113 days now.
Well done.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. So I very much understand addiction, you know, and there's a lot of guys out there that are addicts and don't even know it. Do you know what I mean? They don't even know it. 100%.
They often say that the addict's the last person to find out.
Of
they're
course,
addicts,
absolutely. Yeah.
You will. There's so many different things, and obviously we were talking earlier about the types of money you can make in the industry, so you can afford it.
That's it.
And then you maybe meet certain people who are for the kind of whatever you want to call it, like the criminal world or whatever, who'll supply that for you. Whilst if you're working at the high end restaurants, and listen, they're not think they think they're doing you a favour, because it's like they're just flinging you at, like. And this is the thing that people have got to kind of see it. It seems to be like a vicious circle that nobody's talking about.
Aye, absolutely.
Do you think that they don't want to talk about it?
100%, and it's very much like, again, there's charities and stuff, and I won't name any names, but there's a culture where it's like you put a poster up on the wall in the kitchen, and that seems to owners, you know, head chefs, whatever, seem to think that's enough. You know, there's a poster for help if you need it, mental health support, whatever, and that's it. And these guys know that there's an epidemic. These owners, business owners, and all the rest, they know what's going on in kitchens.
Aye.
They know how much people are struggling, you know, with the mental health and with their drug taking, and a lot of it's just turn a blind eye.
Do you need it? Like, and I don't mean that. Like, obviously, you've got your own wee job now, 95, and you work in a great wee place. But I'm just talking about, see, for that high kind of velocity, kind of work. I'm not saying you need it, but does it helpful? Like in that way, do you know what I mean? Like,
I think to an extent, and like I said, it goes with this. There's a sort of glamorous side to it in the industry. You know, it's like all the big chefs back in the day. I won't name any names, but a lot of famous faces. I mean, there's guys come out. Tom Kerridge, for example, has come out and he's spoke about his addiction, and so I mean, it's from you're sort of the bottom of the chain to the top of the chain. It's right across it, you know, and it does. To begin with, certainly you feel like it helps. You know what I mean? But then it does become. It gets to a point when you're just like, you know, you're getting home at night and you're sitting in your living room at 3 o'clock in the morning on your own, and you're still going, you're still sniffing like that. You start thinking, right, wait a minute here, this isn't normal behaviour. Do you know what I mean? You try and normalise it, but it's not normal behaviour.
What kind of hours were you working sometimes? But
so when I took my first head chef job, I was 25, 26. Big glamorous restaurant, football players, all the rest of it. As you say, faces from the underworld or whatever you want to call it. So you're pulling in massive hours. You're doing 14-hour days, 5-6 days a week. You know, so it's not just the hours. It's exhausting work. It's constant, especially in these high end places where it was. You're feeding 600 people a day. You know, it's just relentless. You know, so you can understand why people need something to sort of to boost their energy, whatever. You know, but like I say, that quickly becomes a hindrance. You know what I mean? I
think because I mean, some of the stats when I was looking up, like over America, they reckon that like 20% of hospitality and that are addicted to drugs or alcohol. That's a lot, right? Now, I mean, you're obviously saying, because I often say this with the prison, right? And I can only say this with the prison. Yeah. The prison will come out with stats sometimes like saying 40% are addicted, right? And I would genuinely go like 90 plus. Like if you've really seen the real stats. Is it similar in that industry?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's as high as figures like that, but it's certainly people using drugs in the industry, I'd say there's, you know, in any place you go in, you're probably looking at, you know, big high volume places where there's a big workforce. You're probably talking 30-40% of the staff minimum are taking drugs. They might not be addicts, you know. I understand that there's people out there that take drugs and they're not addicts, you know what I mean? But it's a massive number. I mean, that number that you said earlier on is just way off the mark in my opinion, and I think that's where there needs to be something, you know, there needs to be something for people in the industry, from people in the industry that understand it, I think, you know what I mean? That's the only way that it's going to change is...
Would you be comfortable going, like, as somebody who's got an addiction? Would you be comfortable maybe like on your first head chef job? Would you be comfortable going to a restaurant and saying, "Listen, man, I've got a problem"?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. A lot of the time, the party lifestyles is glamorised from...
You get free drink and all that, didn't you? Like
absolutely. That? I mean, I had in my first head chef job, I was there for nearly 7 years and I had what was called a tab, but you never paid for the tab, so I could finish my shift at the end of the night and go and have 2 bottles of red wine, which I very often did, you know, and not pay a penny for it. So, like I say, it's coming from above. They're sort of not pushing, but they're supporting that lifestyle, that sort of rock star lifestyle. If that's what you want to call it. As long as you get the work done, they're willing to turn a blind eye and in a way support it in terms of the alcohol, free alcohol and that kind of thing. I mean, how giving people that are working 14-hour shifts 5 days a week free booze at the end of their shift, how is that a good idea in anybody's book? It's just looking back on it, I'm like, well, it's absolutely insane, but that's very often the case, you know what I mean?
I think, but when you watch, see like glamorous stuff, and unfortunately, alcohol has got a big part to play. You see it in the adverts and stuff, and you see it like when they're like maybe Ciroc, Grey Goose, whatever, all these kind of things. It's all like showing you like this lifestyle that really isn't what the lifestyle's like. It's never ever like the party that they show you. Do you know what I mean? It's never like that. No. But it's just marketing.
Aye.
So see if you're obviously wanting like to push that kind of lifestyle on it, wouldn't it be very, I suppose if you're in a place where you're kind of wanting people to buy drink, that's where you're making your money, that's where you're making, wouldn't it be very glamorous to kind of go, hey, look, we're do you know what I mean? Like we're not really pushing a party lifestyle here. Do you know
exactly,
what I mean? So
exactly.
I suppose in their marketing side, they're probably, I don't know if did you ever watch Dope Sick?
Aye.
With the Oxycontin thing, when they've got the nice little lasses jumping about, kicking about, and it's all marketing, and I think you can market anything in a certain way.
Yeah, of course you can.
But you don't want that. You really don't want the secrets of that industry coming out.
Well, this is the thing, I know, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that maybe watch this podcast and be like, I think he should just shut his mouth. Do you know what I mean? But I've worked with too many people and seen too many people struggle, and there's something needs to change in the industry, you know. Like, I'm fortunate now that I've got a fantastic workplace and there's no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's no addiction problems. This might come as a surprise to my employers, you know, but it's very much a healthy atmosphere to work in. But that's took me a long time to find that in my industry, you know. I've relapsed countless times back in the day. Through work, through going to work, which when you think about it, if you worked in a bank, you'd be pretty safe. If you were an addict in recovery and you were going to work in a bank, you wouldn't be really be at risk of a relapse there. And I understand that, like you say, it is an industry where there needs to be marketing and it needs to be glamorous and sexy and they need to sell alcohol and all the rest of it. I completely understand that, but there needs to be more done to support the guys behind the scenes. And then in kitchens as well, Sean, it's a bunch of misfits, you know. Like I'll be brutally honest, and any chef you speak to, he'll tell you the same. You know,
I've heard that.
It's not. It's, you know, it's guys. There are a lot of guys. Paul, that's been on your podcast. You know, I gave him his first job when he got out of jail, and there's a lot of people that are just, society's not really. They're not they don't fit into society, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? So that also fuels the fire. But these people still need support and help. Do you know what I mean? It's
definitely. I think, so see if I can take you back, right? If I can take you back to looking at you, can you kind of pinpoint when you realise you had an addiction?
I think when it was my first head chef job, and as I said, there was people coming in as well, and I was guilty of myself putting, as a senior member of that operation, you had the sort of the capabilities to give people discounts, and it was never questioned. You were in a senior position, you were trusted with it. So I would be giving discounts to people and getting stuff in return for things like that. So I think, and that's when I realised I had an addiction. But it wasn't me that realised it was my wife.
Aye.
And she's been my rock. She's stuck with me through thick and thin, through it all, And it was her that sort of that brought it to attention. And then when I started thinking about it, I was like, well, actually, like I say, sitting at 3 o'clock in the morning on your own, that's not normal behaviour by any stretch of the imagination. Do you know what I mean? So
your brain will normalise anything.
Absolutely.
Especially with addiction. Like I remember,
and when you're getting it for free as well, that's it's a really difficult thing to not do when you're getting it for free 3 or 4 nights a week. You know what I mean? So
I think when you talk about like with your missus and stuff, it's similar to me. Like I don't know where I'd been at, and I often think about guys who are in prison and don't have anybody, right? I often think about that and go like, what the fuck do you expect this person to do?
I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for my wife. That's genuinely, I know I wouldn't the way I was going. I was.
Is losing chefs common? Like losing chefs to addiction, like is that common?
In terms of losing,
like dying.
I mean, there certainly has guys that have passed away in the industry, but the industry is it's fueled with young people, and then a lot of the time people will burn out and they'll move on and they'll change career and whatever. So you'll probably find that in the city centre, for example, if you're in any restaurant you go into, maybe out with the head chef, a lot of the guys are probably 30 and under. You know what I mean? There's not a long shelf life for chefs. There is for some chefs at a certain level, but your sort of everyday restaurants and the places that you're going to go and get 2 courses for 15 quid and all the rest of it, I would say that most of the time that'll be a young workforce. So it's like they're happy to do the partying and the work, and then they'll maybe go on to something else when they sort of settle down, so to speak. You know what I mean? But it's always been an industry I've wanted to be in. So I
think if you've got passion and love for it, then and obviously you have, like obviously we've spoke about like how we'll speak about later on how you're hoping to do your own podcast, maybe highlight some of these issues and stuff. But I think I've spoke to guys before who've says I've went to like away up north to get away from it, to go and chef and like really high end places up there,
cut themselves
and
off.
Just the same thing happens. It says like the exact same thing happens. It's like you move away from the area, think it's the area, and all of a sudden you realise that it's you. And it takes a long time for you to maybe realise that.
Of course it does. And the industry doesn't help that, like you say, when you're trying to run away from it and you're disappearing to the most remote places and it's still there in a plate. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Addiction, as you know, Sean, it's a personal issue. It's nothing. I can't blame hospitality or growing up in a rough area, or I'm just an addict. And as we said before when we were having a chat, I believe it's genetic. I've got addiction in my family, all through my family. But if you're in that industry, it certainly fires it. It's not a good industry to be in if you're an addict. No,
I can imagine if you've got a problem with alcohol and you've got a free bill, then even if you manage to get off it, the time you go back in, you really need to be headstrong to go back into that same environment, especially when burnout. Because that's one of the things I was looking at, mate. Obviously, in the industry, burnout is a big thing.
Massive,
because I can only imagine, like, so say, like, because for example, a lot of people haven't worked as a chef or haven't worked in kitchens, right? See, when you watch like Gordon Ramsay, right, and he's on like that, like the kitchen nightmares or whatever. Is that the way it is? Like, is it like?
It can be. It certainly can be.
Like shouting at you.
Oh, aye. I mean, it's getting less like that now, but it certainly can be. And I was guilty of it when I took my first head chef job. and I would go home at night and I'd speak to my wife and I'd just be like, I just feel like I feel horrible, you know what I mean? But I was 26-year-old and I was in charge of 40 people.
Aye.
Some, you know,
Aye.
some very shady characters
Aye.
and some big characters, and sometimes, well, not sometimes, that was the only way that I felt that I could control the environment properly, was ruling it with an iron fist. You know what I mean? So I put pressure on people. You know, I'm guilty of it. Now, I would never raise my voice at anybody. I think going to work and getting shouted at is absolutely ridiculous. But back then, when I took my first head chef job, mixture of alcohol, cocaine, ego. You know, it's a bad potion.
It's a bad potion, and I think probably anybody, like as we say, is like at 26-year-old getting that type of money, getting to kind of like in the environment you're jumping about with maybe fitter players and like whatever shady characters that are it's all money into it, and it's like ego and
you get sucked in quickly.
You get sucked in very quickly, and I imagine that even if you're trying to like run a top restaurant and somebody's making mistakes constantly and it's pushing you back, I can imagine it would be dead easy to lose the hang.
So easy.
Do you know what I mean?
So easy, aye. But that's just not who I am as a person, you know what I mean? It was almost like I was an actor, you know, like, because don't get me wrong, in the heat of the moment, anybody can lose their temper, and I did lose my temper, you know, properly a few times. But a lot of the time it was just sort of, I had to just rule, like I say, with that iron fist, just to make sure that everything was ticking and these mistakes weren't happening. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that was a great period of my life, my first head chef job, you know, won awards and, you know, all the rest of it. And it was great, but there'll be people watching it and they'll be like, he was an arsehole to work with, do you know what I mean? But that was how I was taught, you know. I grew up in that environment in kitchens where, you know, I had my mum phoning one of my first head chefs, screaming at him because I'd been scalped with a bowl of hot soup, you know, for sending it up to the pass wrong. Aye. Proper old school stuff. You know? Thankfully, it's classed as old school now, which is a good thing, you know. And it's maybe the industry's starting to go in the right direction a wee bit, you know. But I think like when you put that amount of pressure on people as well, like they're going to need some form of release, you know. You're not just going to leave that job and just, you know, sorting her up the road, and when you've been 14 hours all day, it's been manic, there's been somebody breathing down your neck. Exactly. You know, it's nuts, mate. You know what I mean? It's absolutely nuts. So it's very difficult to just walk away and then go and switch off, you know. The rare nights that I would go home straight from work, I'd still sit up to 3 in the morning wired, you know. I don't mean wired taking anything, just the adrenaline of it all, you know, when you're in that environment. It's so fast paced, it's so loud, it's so, that's addictive as well, you know.
I think people see, I would disagree with you, right, on the genetic thing, right? And the only reason I disagree is I think addiction is a behavioural thing. I think that's only my opinion. Everybody's got their own opinion on it. I believe like it's shaped by your experiences in life. Usually some sort of traumatic thing will bring it into purpose. And people then, your life experiences, like growing up, kicking about and maybe being and doing things that you like, I think all that shapes you, and then you've gone into a high-end kind of high-paced job that's get burnout. I think addictions, like your chances of no going down that road are slim. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
So I don't know. I'd need to be convinced about the genetic thing. I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate, and I think when you read his book In the Realm of the Hungry Ghost, I think he puts addiction in the best way I've ever seen it. Do you know what I mean? Like I couldn't put it any better. But I mean, there's certainly studies out there that talk about it being a disease, and it be other studies saying it's genetic and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So, and it's whatever gets you through. See whatever you believe, Graeme. It's no. You don't need to take on. I think this is what we've lost in Scotland. We've lost it, and actually probably in the whole West at the moment. I think we've lost the art of having a healthy debate with somebody.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Sean,
you can't talk about something.
You need to be on one side or the other, and that's it. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground for conversation or healthy debate or anything. You know, it's you're one thing or the other, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? It's sad. It's sad.
And I think some of the fellowships, like I mean, I see some of the guys in the fellowships who flourish.
Yeah.
They're amazing. And then you'll see other guys like yourself, and I've heard this quite like coming a bit more, where people feel as if they're like getting pushed into things and maybe like a certain. Whereas the people I know who are in like I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like James Docherty and 5-0 and all that. They wouldn't have you doing that. They, like, do you know what I mean? Like the groups that they run are very much kind of know, like they wouldn't push God on you, wouldn't make you do it. But you do hear more and more of it. Like, so even like the fellowship, I think is more. I think this is only my opinion. I think when something like addiction becomes so, Dan McGarvey talks about it well, like when he talks about trauma, and he talks about how it gets overused, and then it becomes like some sort of kind of, I don't even know, like it's overused, and then people start putting their own spins on things. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the stuff with trauma. You know, like people are cashing in on that.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely,
and cashing in on addiction and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
And neurodivergent disorders.
There is
a lot of that out there, and a lot of it's false, definitely. But it's very difficult when you genuinely are an addict.
Of course,
you get ADHD and you've been through huge trauma. 13-year-old losing your dad. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, it was a Friday night, you know, and we were waiting for my dad to pick me up, and they dropped dead outside the Royal at 37-year-old. Do you know what I mean? Younger than I am just now, you know. And I've got 2 young kids, and now that I'm older, it's a whole. You're still you don't stop processing trauma like that.
No,
at all, because now as a father who's now older than my dad when he died, I think I find myself thinking every day, like, you know, how must he have felt and the pressures he must have been under when having a mortgage on his own and all various different things, you know. So that trauma just it kind of evolves with you, you know, and you have to learn how to deal with it. And obviously, I dealt with substances for years, you know, but now I'm at a point where I feel I'm healthy. I understand my addictions. I understand why I became an addict, and I know what you're saying about the behavioural things, and I do think there's probably room for both, to be honest, Sean. I think there's room for, you know, people being shaped into addicts, and I think there's people that maybe it is a sort of more of a genetic thing, and then maybe it just takes that wee trigger and that sort of fires it up. I do think there's room for both, you know, because there's certainly people I've worked with that have came from, you know, not the same background that I've came from, and have became addicts, and you think, you know, well, there's no trauma there and whatever. So that's where I think the genetic thing kind of come into play a wee bit. Do you know what I mean? But then it could also be, as you say, the behavioural side of it, in the sense of working in that environment, being in that sort of constant pressure, that could just crack you. That could crack someone.
Do you know? And see even if you go back to like when we were at school, and you think about like all the people who all hung about up at the top of the door smoking, and all hung about like early road smoking, and like all us who were like on, I don't know what you would class as like all the kind of ones that kind of like drank at the weekends, you know, that kind of stuff, wore the Bergosses hats, all that kind of stuff. You probably look. I could probably look back at a lot of my pals and probably see there is a lot of neurodivergent stuff going on with the people. Do you know what I mean?
Sean, 100%.
And they didn't fit in at school. Yeah. And I think I've got ADHD, right? My organisational skills and stuff like that is terrible.
We've been talking about this podcast for months, and I've only got in touch with you 2 days ago, you know, and I've been saying to myself every day, I'm going to give Sean a phone, I'm going to give Sean a phone.
I'm the same.
Do you know what I mean?
It's like, I think I drive Paul mad sometimes, some of the things that I've done, man. Like, but I think it's if you look back, it is looking at there is a trend of maybe
misfits almost.
Aye, but then I think now maybe they're overdoing it. I don't know. Like maybe now they're overdoing. Like they're trying to like. I mean, my 4-year-old. No, I'm not going to talk about that. Right, I'll take that bit out. Right, I'm not sure I'll laugh on that.
Cut that out.
I mean, kids. There's kids that are getting diagnosed at a young age, or trying to be diagnosed, or trying to say like 3 and 4-year-olds are maybe like, which I'm not like a professional in that field, but Wayne's are Wayne's.
Exactly. I've spoke to my wife about that and about with my son and his sort of behavioural traits. She's a teacher and she also does work with ASN, so like additional support needs. So she's quite clued up on neurodivergent stuff and whatever, and she's a firm believer that it just can't be judged at a young age like that. You know, you need to be in a social setting, at school, surrounded by other kids before you can really properly. That's her opinion anyway, and she's a professional, you know what I mean? So,
but do you not think everybody's probably a bit neurodivergent?
Of course, I think the spectrum. Everybody's on the spectrum at some level.
I mean, even if, like take like Elon Musk, right? Like for example, the richest man in the world,
and probably the most social awkward.
But you can see it in him. He's probably like, I don't know if he's autistic or whatever, but he's certainly got something going on. Do you know what I mean? But he's genius. Like he thinks like about singularity, and he thinks about like crazy things. That
I think there needs to be neurodivergent stuff going on to have that level of IQ. To be honest,
I
don't think that's something that, you know. I don't think you could have someone that could speak to a room full of people comfortably and be the life and soul of the party, but also have that level of IQ. I don't think those two things can be the same. You know, I don't think
a guy, right, a typical guy who was still in uni, right? I was out there doing a talk, and a guy with like baldy in the middle, right, kind of curly hair, like kind of heavy guy, glasses, typical looking kind of professor, right? And I got talking to him, very awkward to write. It was very awkward to speak to.
Yeah.
But he told me like he had like 7 degrees or something, right? And like 3 doctorates, right? And I was just like what?
When do you stop?
What is it you do? And what work do you do? He's like, I don't. He's like, I work with you. I just like they study all the time. But I'm going like that to myself. I don't think this guy would. Like, he was so like, see, when he
place for society,
and as a job, I don't know if, because I certainly talking to him, I'm going, I don't think students would take to this guy, like talking, like even though he's probably an absolute fountain of knowledge, but
that's what I mean. There needs to be that sort of relatability or that ability to talk to people, and I think your Elon Musks and these kind of geniuses just don't have that. You know, there's definitely something.
I think lacking. Elon and that. I think people like Elon Musk and like your Andrew Tates and these people have got a bit of both. They've got the high IQs and they've got a bit of charisma as well, which I think allows them to kind of be the kind of dominant force that they are. Do you know what I mean? And people take to them because they're intellectual.
Helps as well.
Oh, definitely. Listen, I'm not a fan of any of the two of them, but I think when you can listen to them, you can you can get took in with any of these people, and
you see that in society as well. People getting sucked into this divisive politics and all the rest of it. It's a wild time, but that's another conversation.
That's definitely. I don't want to get me started on that. So if we can take you back to when you found your addiction, right? What was your first steps? What did you kind of do? Like,
I went to the doctors. That was my first step. I went to my GP, and
atrocious,
terrible.
I know,
terrible. Just you know, went in, broke down in tears. All the rest of it, you know, like 28-year-old, 29-year-old, whatever age I was. She said, you know, I'm addicted to cocaine, and it was sobbing and crying, and it was basically just we'll refer you to the services, but don't expect anything quick, and here's a number to phone if you ever need it. and that was like a Samaritan's number. It wasn't even like an NHS thing. It was just Samaritan. I could Google that.
So did they know even? Did they know if did they refer you to addictions?
They referred me, but it never. That I think it was maybe about a year later before I even got an appointment.
Fucking hell.
Aye.
Well, I know. Obviously, I've worked in addictions before, so it's like I know how that field works, and it's again, it's like they want you to, they want massive results with such a small budget. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like they're not willing to put the time and effort into what they want, but going to a doctor and opening up and breaking down for the first time should be the opportunity for you to then get signposted to the correct place. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I expected. I expected that would be the case.
And how did that make you feel?
Like helpless, helpless to the addiction. There was. I just felt I wasn't going to get anywhere with it, and then I tried to go to CA meetings. I've just never wanted the fellowship from the start. From back at the start, it's just never been something that I've been able to relate to, and I've found it too pushy and found it quite cliquey at times, and and it works for people. One of my best mates, it's 13, 14 years sober. It's worked for him, and there's absolutely no doubt in it works. It's been, it's the day.
No, I'm a massive advocate. I'm not
likewise. I would tell anyone to go
Yep.
and give it a try if you feel that you've got an addiction. Absolutely. Personally, but it's not for me. So I just felt helpless, Sean, totally helpless. Didn't know really where to go, and ended up paying for private therapy because I was in a position to. Now there's a lot of people out there, especially in hospitality, that are not. That don't have that not that fortunate that they can just phone a private therapist and get an appointment the next day. You know what I mean? It's rough, and that's what I think. There needs to be something that sort of that changes. And I've said on my socials that I want to start like a Wednesday walk in Glasgow Green, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Anybody, it's for hospitality, but anybody can turn up. Just go for a walk and a bit of fresh air, not sitting in a room, not being judged. Don't need to worry about your boss being there, and just have a chat with people that are going through the same shit that you're going through. Do you know what I mean? So that's something that's going to be starting in the next few weeks.
Good,
to try and sort of get people that are maybe put off going to the fellowship, or they're sick of waiting lists, or they can't get they can't get private help, or they can't afford whatever. A walk and a chat does a lot more than you think.
Definitely.
Well, Sean, obviously, but a walk and a chat can do wonders for people. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of people don't know that. People that are in addiction don't understand the power that can yield to just talking to people that have got through the other side. Having a bit of fresh air and having a chat with them, that can really change people. It can change people's...
Graeme, listen, people don't. My inbox is absolutely full. Like I honestly can't, like, there's so many people write to me, and I try my hardest to help as many people as I can, but there's no, like, I actually can't deal with the amount of people that message me now. Like, I can't, it's impossible. And I actually got a really nice message at Christmas. So there had been a guy that had basically, I'll give him a big shout out to Paul. I know he always watches the show, but so Paul had like been in addiction for a long time, but his brother had reached out to me and said, "Look, Sean, Paul loves your show. He read your book. He really likes everything you do. Like, is there any chance I'll come and pick you up and you can come and meet him and stuff?" And obviously, I've got absolutely no time. I've got work. I've got my wains. I've got hanging. But what I did say is, I'll say, "Look, I can a phone call work?" So I phoned him for I was on the phone to him for like 40 minutes or whatever. We had a good talk, and he was a lovely guy. And I got a message from his brother to say that he had went to the first time he'd went to like the Christmas dinner in like years, and the first time he'd go out, and he said, and obviously he was just thanking us for that. And I just say that's just one conversation. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly.
That sparked that wee thing that can maybe allow somebody to hang you. But when you're trying to grow and you're trying to addictions are a lonely place.
Oh, it's terribly lonely.
so many people out there aren't anywhere near admitting it.
No. A lot of people don't even know they've got an addiction, you know. It's just
I know.
Society's very much
it's normalised.
It's so normalised, you know what I mean? Going for a pint and having a line.
I know.
That's it boggles my mind now, but I mean I was part of that culture, but now being sober and you know, getting through the other side of addiction, for that to be normal is just mind blowing. You know what I mean? Like people just taking chance after chance after chance, and it's so normalised. It's part of going out, you know, for a lot of people, and I know. I don't see that changing. You know, I don't see it changing.
No, I don't. I don't think there's the money's there to change it. There's no. If anything, it's getting stripped back, and I think Scotland of kind of. We've spoken about it on this podcast numerous times. They've kind of made it clear where they're going. They're going for harm reduction.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think westernised, that's what we do, is we try and treat a problem rather than cure it.
Look at what Portugal done, you know, they decriminalised drugs, and it was incredible.
I don't know if it was I don't know now if it's I think it was a success at the start, but I don't think it's quite as successful as now. I think me personally, I think relational wealth, who have you got in your life that's able? What positive influences have you got around about you that you can tap into?
Yeah.
What's like? Who have you got that you can use? That's going to give you that kind of like something back, because a lot of times you're giving you the energy and then you're not getting anything back and you get drained when that happens.
Of course.
But if you're in like as you say, if you're going to do a walk and talk, it's like you're getting that energy kind of, and it's like an exchange. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's things like that they work. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Communities. Do you know what I mean? There's a lack of community these days.
Of course,
it's been eroded massively, especially working class communities. It's been eroded massively.
Absolutely.
So a lot of loneliness and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's beyond me, right, is I can't get this. You might be able to get this, Graeme, right? It goes against everything I know about addiction, right? But what you're starting to see more and more of is young boys at 18 and 19 who are getting massive addictions on cocaine, that are sitting in their rooms, their cells, sniffing their pans in, like dry. I don't get that.
Yeah.
I can't get that.
I mean, I got to that stage. I did get to that stage where I was sitting myself sniffing, and I sometimes wouldn't be drinking. I'd just be home sniffing, you know, on my own. It's really sad. It's really lonely. But for me to get to that stage, there was years and years of huge socialising, partying, going out, you know, going to clubs, all the rest of it. Straight off the bat, that would have been, you know, that would have been obscene to even think like that. But as you're saying, that's a thing now, which is just terrifying. You know what I mean?
But see when you ask them like, what if they get any trauma, if they get any, it's like no, like, they don't. It goes against everything that. I understand. I was taught about addiction.
No, absolutely,
you know what I mean?
of course.
It's I don't know if it's like, I think football's got a big part to play in it. See, like going to games and stuff like that, and then having games 2 and 3 games a week and stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of people get caught up in that. But I mean, you can't blame football. Do you know what I mean? There's plenty of people.
No, but it's like you can't blame hospitality. Do you know what I mean? But there's just certain settings that definitely
that ignite it.
Absolutely.
So see if like I can take you to mental health and the hospitality. What's that like?
As a whole across the industry.
So is there a lot of depression?
I'd say so. There's
anxiety.
I mean, the guys that I'd class as my best mates now are all chefs or ex-chefs, and they've all suffered massively. You know what I mean? A few of them have tried to take their own life, and that's like a group of 4 or 5 people. So, I mean, if you're going to put it as a percentage, like. That could be a full kitchen team, really. There, do you know what I mean? That's like 5 head chefs, and every single one of them have battled demons. Some of them suicide attempts. You know, like so. I think it's extremely widespread across the industry. I think the industry, it can be so draining that it's just hard not to. You know, when it's low pay, long hours, you know, and as I say, you might be a bit of a social misfit. You can't really work anywhere else. It can be quite a dark place, you know what I mean?
Well, see, when I was looking at the kind of thing, it was saying like obviously like the reasons that the hospitality's fueled addiction, the industry conditions in Scotland. So it's long kind of antisocial hours, low pay, as you were saying, job insecurity. High turnover of staff, stress for customer demands, emotional labour, toxic culture again. And it says abuse from customers, colleagues reported 95% during COVID peaks. So did you face a lot of abuse at times? Have you had that?
Aye. My whole career, like when I was young, like learning, coming up, it was very, as I said, class is the old school now, but it was very... It was an abusive environment constantly. That was just how...
So is there a manager? Like, is there a manager of that, the kind of restaurant, and he... and
it would be, from a kitchen point of view, it would be from the head chef.
Right.
That's where your abuse would have came from. You know, with the head chef or the sous chef.
Aye.
Sometimes you'd get a good sous chef and it'd be all right, but the head chef, generally speaking, when I was coming up, was always an animal, you know, just an absolute beast, just on you constantly.
That, didn't you? Like you,
well, I mean, it was almost glamorised to be like that, and I think a lot of people, probably myself included, when I was younger, get kind of sucked into that. That's what a head chef needs to be. You know what I mean? But you don't realise the damage it's doing to people, and the damage that I maybe have done to people, and if I have. You know, well, like I said earlier, I went home at night every night feeling guilty and speaking to my wife about, you know, a terrible day at work today. Like, I had to, you know, go through 3 or 4 different people and carrying that home and feeling emotionally distressed about having to do that. You know what I mean? It's a crazy industry, Sean, and mental health is just, I think it's very poor across the industry, definitely.
So it says here overall, like it says 80% feel overworked, 55% take stress related time off, and 60% in one Scottish survey experienced anxiety, depression, and stress at work. So again, that's like massive, isn't it? Like, and then this was quite a shock to me. It says that hospitality ranks as the top industry for substance use and disorders.
It's not a surprise.
I'm very surprised you.
No,
of course.
Aye. But that's what I'm saying. That's immense. Exactly what I'm saying. It's everywhere. You know what I mean? It's just poor working conditions, poor pay, long hours. I mean, everybody's a human being. There's only so much people can take. You know what I mean? And then it's people are off with stress. They don't hire someone else to cover that.
Is it all cocaine, or is there other drugs?
I mean, there's other drugs. So, I mean, when I stopped taking cocaine, I ended up addicted to painkillers and benzos after that, because they were rife in the kitchens. Do you know what I mean? And it started with cocodamals, prescription cocodamals that a guy I worked with used to get.
My
and I took them,
and
I got that wee buzz, and then before I knew it, I was taking. Well, when I got to my worst, you know, I was taking opiates on a level with an IV heroin user, I was told, you know, so
definitely it's and I think
sorry, to answer your question, it's definitely not just cocaine.
Aye.
I mean, there's any drug that you want, you'll find in the kitchen.
Aye,
definitely.
So, what was it like? What I mean, I can't imagine being like full of benzos working in a kitchen, but obviously it must be dangerous, eh? Like, it must be dangerous.
I managed it for a while. Before I mean, benzos eventually you eventually crumble just by the what they do to you. Do you know what I mean? But to begin with, they give you that bravado as well, you know, because you lose your inhibition completely. So it kind of changes you. So it's definitely a dangerous environment, but they're rife in kitchens as well. Again, because I think it goes hand in hand with the cocaine abuse. Any upper, you need something to bring you down, don't you? So they're rife that way. Painkillers, I don't know so much. I think that was just me, just a personal, just being an addict by nature. You know, just got.
I don't think so. I think painkillers, like me personally, I think painkillers are played down. Like I genuinely do. Like I really think painkillers are like a hidden kind of. See, like with the thing with Oxycontin, I mean, I read a stat that something like 80 odd percent of people, like in the UK, are on some sort of tablet.
Well, I mean, I was in the chemist this morning and I seen a woman buying a packet of cocodamol, and I thought, just instantly I went to where I was, where I'd been in the past, and I was just like, I hope that poor woman's not,
I know,
not going down that road of lighting the cocodamol a wee bit too much, because it's a slippery slope. You know
no, and as you say, people don't realise how addictive these things are.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I've got an uncle who's a nurse, and he's always said it for years that stuff like that shouldn't be allowed over the counter. Even your 8 milligram cocodamol shouldn't. Opiates should not be allowed to be sold over the counter. You know what I mean? And you're completely right in what you're saying. I think it's a hidden problem. I think in America it was obviously very publicised, and because the marketing, the advertising, and all that. Here it's a bit more hidden, but I think it's definitely
I think America still go that. I think America still go, and you'll get things for Xanax and like, you can't get to sleep at night. Here's Zopical. I mean? It's
I think you can go over there and just ask your doctor for whatever you want. You get the script written. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. Well, there's a good Netflix one called, I think it's called The Chemist.
Right.
And it's like, it's showing you about just a lassie, but it ends up like she's addicted.
Right.
So she's a doctor, but she's sitting just writing prescriptions. But some of the wee guys that were going were like 15 and that, and they were getting like, but it was the same. So it was a guy who basically lost his son at a young age, and he was like, how did his son end up with this volume of drugs in his system? And he kind of started researching into it, and he kind of found out that this doctor was putting out, it was in a kind of shady bit of whatever it was for. I'm sure it was like Baltimore or something. And it turned out that this doctor had been writing the same prescription, so it was like 50 quid a prescription, and you got like X amount of milligram of Oxycontin, X amount of milligram of Xanax, X milligram of diazepam, and that's like
a cocktail right there. Your opiates and your benzos mixing them.
Honestly, the queue was massive.
I can imagine.
But again, it's like these drugs work if they're done right, if they're took right.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
And this is the problem.
There's a massive need for stuff like diazepam.
Of course.
It's medically, it's one of the most prescribed drugs in the world. I believe. I think it's right up there, and if it's for the right reasons, then it can be a miracle drug.
If you've lost a loved one or something, and it's a shock, and you get 2 weeks of diazepam, it can work. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this is the thing. Like, a lot of people don't then go on to just start abusing. Do you know what I mean? They'll take the 2 weeks but if you've maybe got underlying trauma, or you've got underlying stuff that you've not dealt with, underlying problems, and then you take that drug,
that relief,
especially painkillers, because I always say it doesn't just take the physical pain away, it takes emotional pain.
Exactly, right.
And we would all rather sit in a room and get punched about than have the mental torture. Do you know what I mean? Because that's worse. Do you know what I mean?
Stuck in your own head. And that's when my mental health. That's when it really deteriorated for me. Was when it wasn't kind of the cocaine, and I got off the cocaine. I mean, it wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I got off it and got clean from that. But it was the painkillers and the benzos for me. That's where it really went downhill quite rapidly, and I struggled with it for years, and that was the one for me that almost got me. Do you know what I mean? It's a couple of suicide attempts, and I could not find a way off them, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much, at this point I had addiction workers, so I was in the system, I was in the care system at this point. I had people to talk to, I had therapists on hand and all the rest of it, but I just could not get off it. I mean, these drugs are so... I know. People don't understand how opiates and benzos how addictive they are, you know. And if
know.
you're an addict already in recovery and you get onto stuff like that,
no,
it's bad. It's bad.
I don't think people realise that, and I think it's just, again, is it a lack of kind of knowledge? Do they want people, like, I often think, do they want people knowing these things? Do they want people, because again, it's like you've got, we're not going to go into the big conspiracy thing, right? But you've got big pharma who don't want to cure.
Why would they?
Do you know what I mean? Then they would have no customers.
In a capitalist society, why would you want to create a cure? It makes no sense.
If you treat something, then you're going to have a patient for life.
Of course.
So it makes sense to keep that there, and because you very rarely hear of them coming up for a cure for whatever, like a cure for this or a cure for that.
And certainly not for mental health issues, you know.
Mental health, I mean, anxiety, you go to your doctor and the drugs, most likely they'll put you on like citalopram and all this kind of stuff, like sertraline and all that, and it's serotonin and supposed to be, and it works for some people. Do you know what I mean? Again, like,
no,
it works for some people.
It does, absolutely.
But again, you're not curing it. You're just you're masking it.
Just a band-aid on it.
But I don't know. So we'll move into the more positive kind of aspect. So how did you start changing then? What was the kind of pinnacle of when you went, right, and I'm starting to get better here? So
it would have been about 4 years ago. Would have been the big change. That's when I'd finally stopped, and it was after, I mean, you're saying going to a positive, but the positive does start with a negative, and it was after a suicide attempt that I tried to take my life. I took a load of, at this point I was on opiate substitutes, because I was taking, as I say, my painkiller intake was so high, you know, my opiate intake was so high, so I was on a substitute for that, and at this point I'd built up a level of trust with my workers and stuff, so I was getting a week's supply at a time. I wasn't having to go and get it daily. So I'd worked, and then got a hold of a load of benzos, a week's supply of that, bottle of vodka, took them all, downed it, and then shot myself. Just thought, I don't want to die. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to die. Managed to make it home. My wife phoned an ambulance, and I was quite lucky. There's no doubt about it, that if I hadn't got home when I got home and my wife hadn't phoned the ambulance, I don't know if I didn't sit here. It was like that. I was in a bad way. Do you know what I mean? And there was relapses after that, but that was just sort of a turning point. And then most recently, it was a couple of years back, probably about 3 years back. Again, trying to go to a fellowship, couldn't go in, and I was just felt helpless. And then eventually one of my mates from my first head chef job, who I still talk to, who's a recovering addict, came through to Glasgow this was after another suicide attempt, came through to Glasgow and dragged me to a meeting, and just been in a room. Hello, I don't go to the fellowships now, and for various different reasons, just been in that room that day and hearing people talking about a life positively, because I always thought I was going to go into these rooms and it was going to be sitting in a circle and it's dark, you know, yourself, Sean. It's nothing like that. It's the opposite. Do you know what I mean? It's can be quite a happy environment, an uplifting environment. You know? So that was the sort of turning point. But by this point, I'd lost my business, and you know, there had been various different things. And my wife and I went through sort of some trouble starting a family. We didn't know if we were going to be able to start a family or not, so that was very traumatic as well. And then I had my son, and that started changing everything. You know, once somebody else comes into your life like that, it's like a love that you've never felt. You know, yourself. And I just thought I need to get my act together, and it took me. It wasn't an overnight fix. You know what I mean? But I definitely, that was it. The sort of turning point. And then I just started going to the fellowships. They did help a lot to begin with, and then I started to sort of disagree with some things and had some sort of, not arguments, but disagreements with people over certain things and how they were, you know, dealing with me. And then this whole sort of starting my own podcast and the Wednesday walk and all that kind of thing, like, I just feel like for me to carry on in my recovery, I need to start giving out. I feel like I want to start giving out, and I just feel positive, and I know this time, well, nobody knows, but this time I feel like I'm in a really strong position. Do you know what I mean? And my wife's just been there for me from day one. I mean, she could have walked away so many times, Sean. And I'm punching well above my weight. Do you know what I mean? Well above my weight, mate. I don't know why she stuck around, but she has. She's an absolute angel. But I starting the family, that was after that also being won't we be able to have kids, and then having two beautiful kids has just been a massive turning point. Landing the job that I'm in, just in a really, really good place. And then that's when the podcast and that comes into it. I want to start giving back to the industry, do you know what I mean? And helping out people that maybe don't want to go to a fellowship, or they don't want, that label. They can come for a walk on a Wednesday, starting off there, obviously I've got higher aspirations for things, but that's, be realistic to begin with. It's a walk in the park. Do you know what I mean? That's literally it. We'll go for a walk in the park.
So see if if you had that magic wand, what would you change in the industry?
What would I change in the industry if I had a magic wand? The hours. I would change the hours. And the staffing, because that's the reason people are pulling so many hours is because everywhere's understaffed. But when it comes down to, and it's for small businesses, like there'll be a lot of people watching this and thinking, like, what's he talking about? But for small businesses, it's very difficult for that bottom line to actually be in the green, And for them to do that, they have to be understaffed. It's just the price of the cost of goods, rates, rent, the lot. It's difficult for small businesses. But if I had a magic wand, that would definitely be that. I would just give kitchens more staff and slash hours, and I guarantee it would overnight.
It'd be a big change. Would you? Do you think there should be, like, maybe if when you're at college and that, do you think do they teach you about that in the industry? No.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for the colleges, but I know a few lecturers. My uncle was a lecturer. It's certainly not it's not something they talk about, no, and it wasn't something that I was actually the opposite. I remember the guy that I had from college coming and talking about, telling us about he'd been on magic mushrooms that weekend, what I mean? So it was, again, that was who you're looking up to, they're at it, do you know what I mean? And in some respects, so it's not something that's spoke about to the youngsters starting in the industry, and I think that's pivotal as well. That should be. I think everybody needs to know what they're getting into. Do you know what I mean? Or not what they're getting into, but what's
I think
what goes along with it.
Grassroots is always the way forward for me. Yeah. And I think having maybe guys like yourself going in and maybe talking to the students, you know what I mean, would be a good start, because for it to be the worst industry, globally, which was, I was kind of shocked at, like. But I suppose this hospitality, does that come under, like, does nightclubs and all that come under?
It's got a massive umbrella. It's a massive umbrella.
So probably would make sense then. But I suppose, again, if you're looking at that kind of world, are they really wanting to highlight addiction?
Certainly not when you go into the nightclub side of things and all that. Absolutely not. That's a lot of them are running on that being their target. Their target audience is drug users. Absolutely.
So obviously, like, when I was just thinking, there's a charity. I don't know if you heard it called charities. It's called Hospitality Health. It's a wellness charter for mental health support. Can't be that big if you've never heard it. You know what I mean? But and then they've got the Ben as well. It was called the
Ben's that's quite a good one. That does help people. That can help people financially if they're struggling and stuff. Right. That is quite a good charity. But I don't think it's not. I don't think it's really that well known, to be honest. Which is a shame. You got a lot of these bigger ones. I won't name names, but it's like they're selling their wristbands. They've got their poster in kitchens, and then you go onto their website and it's straight to their merchandise shop, and you think, what you're really up to here. Do you know what I mean? Like you're selling your wristbands and your hoodies. You know, you've got to bypass that page to get to the help. You know what I mean?
I know.
It speaks for itself, Sean. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
So that's why I think there needs to be some change. You know what
capitalist, isn't it? It's like that's the way.
I can't change the industry worldwide, but I can certainly try and help it in Glasgow. You know.
No, definitely. And listen, this is how all these things start, and it's like we've had there's loads of people been on that have started like just even like Eddie Gorman. Take Eddie for example. Eddie runs Harbour now down in Ayrshire, the biggest addiction charity down there. Like, and we had Eddie on just when he was starting his and it's moved very, very quickly and been very successful. So I mean, you can do it, and it's all about kind of, I suppose, like what we were talking about earlier. I think obviously when you're starting a podcast, everybody in their dog's starting one these days, isn't they? So it's like. It's a big thing to have a podcast. It's a big thing to kind of have that platform, if you like, right? And I remember I said I was talking to 5-0 no long ago, and the two were just talking, and I was saying like about how how long it takes for your platform to grow, and you forget. Listen, Joe Rogan, who's the biggest podcast in the world, he see for 2 or 3 years, nobody listened really. He was getting no a lot of views at all.
Exactly.
But you go like that, like some podcasts move quicker than others, and then you kind of can get disheartened at times. But then like 5-0 was like to me, mate, you've got like 7,000 subscribers and you get 50,000 views a month. You've had over 1 million views on your channel, like. What
you're reaching people,
you're very lucky, and again, that's not. You don't look at it that way. You always look at you don't look at it and go, how lucky am I to have a platform where people listen, even take the time out to listen.
How can I make it grow more, or what am I missing? There must be a trick here that I'm missing, or whatever.
Totally, and you compare. You can't help but compare yourself to like maybe like the podcasts that are going about like, and sometimes you can be stupid enough to compare it. Oh, look at the CEO, Diary of CEO, he's getting 1 million views a week, and you're like, that's who you're comparing yourself to, and you're like, what? Like you need to bring yourself to reality. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But again, it's like I believe that I'll build this, and it takes time.
Of course.
And I think that's when I started this. It was Paul who told me. He was like, "Mate, there's no quick fix to this. It's consistency. It's like it's all about like hanging it." And he's so right. There's no other way. It doesn't just. Happen overnight.
No,
do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. But I think that's something as well. I need being an addict. I need something to be constantly putting my time and effort into. And the podcast will be a big part of that, obviously. But that's sort of helping people and the Wednesday walk. That's going to be a big thing for me. And I'm hoping that I've already had some really positive feedback just in my last sort of post that I put out, and reaching 100 days sober from alcohol. I've been substance free for a number of years, but from alcohol 100 days was fairly recently, and I got a lot of good feedback about the Wednesday walk from that. So that's good. So I'm looking forward to starting that. But I'm under no illusions with the podcast. I mean, obviously that's going to
things are coming your way, right? And I don't believe in coincidences, right? I'm a strong believer that, and the way this podcast came about was basically. It was Steph Aitchison who you had basically put a post out and asked for a bit of help on podcasting, and just basically says, look, I want to do a podcast, blah, blah, blah. And Steph had tagged me, and I Steph's my pal, you know what I mean? So I was like, right,
I remember Steph when you were
I love Steph, but
I was in her class all through school.
So it was Steph who tagged me, and then I was like, right, and then obviously I spoke. I was like, and I see, be honest, I was like, I was at school with Stirling, I never knew it. Like, so the way things happen, I think, and then you obviously spoke to me. I was like, do you know what? I think we can make a podcast out of this, and we have. I think we've made a very good podcast. I think it's going to. shock a lot of people in the way like with the numbers and stuff like, but it's highlighting an issue that maybe we need to look at. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. But I think also it's worth saying that it's an amazing industry to get into. Do you know what I mean? Like my younger brother, for example, he's got into it, and I said to him, you know, because it was. My mum and him were very wary of coming and telling me that he was choosing to become a chef, because I've put a lot of my like problems and issues, like I've placed a lot of that in the past at the door of being a chef rather than looking at me, you know, as addicts do, you know. And it's an amazing industry, and they were very wary of coming to tell me, oh, Graham's going to be disappointed, he's going to be worried, he's going to be that. But I'm delighted for him. But I did say to him, like, you've got to go and do it properly. He's away to working in Glen Eagles, he's living in up there. He's absolutely loving it. He's learning every day. He's sending me messages. Oh, look at this! I'm looking at gorgeous. I'm working with, and he's loving it. And it's an amazing industry. You can travel. It's one of the only industries you can work in where you can travel the world for free. Do you know what I mean? You can go and get paid to travel the world, and
I know
it's a great industry. And I don't want to be here to shine a negative light on it, but I just want to get it out there that there's you know, there's something that I'm hoping to build, something that people can come and talk, walk, whatever it may be, that work in the industry, and you know, they're not having to go to a fellowship. They don't need to worry about their employers finding out, and it's someone that's walked the path. Do you know what I mean? And it's still in the industry.
Totally
made it out the other side. Do you know what I mean?
So just coming up to the end, right? Is there anything that like I've missed out? Like where I know like you want people to maybe start following you. So where can people find you on?
So at the moment, you just find me on Instagram at Chef G Glasgow. So you get me on Instagram. That's where most of my stuff is. I just basically there at the moment. I'm going to get a TikTok up and running. It's not something that I've done. I'm nearly 40.
I
so
can maybe show you how to
set
TikTok up.
But
that should be remember it's TikTok.
That's why I've stayed away from it. But I understand that I'm going to need to go down that route. But follow me at Chef G Glasgow, and that's where you'll find everything about the walk and stuff like that, which I'm hoping to start in the next few weeks. And I just advise anybody that's listening that works in the industry, you don't need to work in the industry. If you want to come along. But anybody that wants in the industry that wants to have a chat, that maybe feels that they've got issues or problems or, you know, whatever it may be, it doesn't need to be addiction. Come along, have a walk and a chat. Guarantee you'll feel better after it. You know, I know that. I can promise that. And I'm just hopefully that I'm just hoping that I can help people, Sean. Do you know what I mean? I'm hoping that I can.
So obviously you've kind of done it there, but I'm going to put you in the spot. But I always give you the last message to the guest, right? So see for anybody maybe watching this who is like a chef who maybe has mental health, addiction, whatever. What would you say?
I'd say that everybody, not everybody, but most people have been in your shoes. You know what I mean? Most people have been sitting where you're sitting. I've been sitting where you're sitting, definitely. Do you know what I mean? And I know it's a lonely place, but there is always a way out, and there's always people that are willing to help you. You know, I'm wanting to start something that's going to help people in the industry. So, and I'm still a chef, you know. So there's, just don't give up on yourself. Do you know what I mean? Just keep believing in yourself and reach out to me personally. My inbox is always open. I'll always reply to anybody that messages me, and come along for a walk when the Wednesday walk starts, definitely.
Brilliant. Listen, Graeme, thanks for coming on.
No problem, Sean.
And me and Paul will be along for a free meal soon.
That's it. Definitely, my man.
No, thank you for coming on.
Right,
mate.
cheers, Sean. Thank you, mate.
Cheers,
bud.